Right, here's a quick video about how to make themed bases. So, themed bases are where the bases for the unit are all designed to go together. This helps with ranking up and gives perhaps a hint of an overall story about what the unit's doing, rather than just a series of individual, identical or similar kind of bases that go together any old way. So here's how I make them. What I've done here is I've got all the bases I'm going to make, and there's 30 bases. These are all blue tacked down onto a piece of cardboard, and you can see one of my other efforts in the background here. We've got a little bit of a road scene and some chips and some road tile made out of little cardboard squares and some plaster and other bits and pieces. So that's what's going on with those guys. Here we've got a series of blank bases down the front ready for the application of terrain. And given that this is an end times era, we're going for a ruined Bretonian hamlet or peasant hut or something that my unit of Dark Elf Bleakswords is going to be striding across. So, given it's what tradition where I'm kind of from for using whatever cheap materials to make terrain and other things, here I am starting with the floorboards for my house out of ice block sticks. Summer here, so we've been eating a lot of cheap lemonade ice blocks to keep cool, so a whole bunch of useful ice block sticks as an example. And not necessarily the best material, but cheap and easily available, and we'll get to a potential drawback with them. So here we go. I've glued them down. Now I'm gluing them at an angle because that's perhaps a little bit more interesting rather than just square, but square across a series of the bases would work. Next, I've added in some small scatter gravel, aka cat litter, around the edges to simulate the edges of the stone walls that would have been around the building. Here I've chopped off some of the ends of the ice block sticks, added a few more scattered boulders and fragments of wood to simulate the idea of, you know, the building's been destroyed or burned down or whatever, and here's kind of what's left. Haven't gone too heavy with this material because you still want a reasonable amount of flat area when it comes to basing your figures, and covering them in cat litter rocks isn't going to be very easy for attaching the figures later or pinning them or whatever. Now here I've skipped a couple of steps. Here I've done two things. One, I've added a whole bunch of sand, and two, I've actually cut all the bases back into individuals and trimmed them up a bit. So here you can see a bunch of the bases going across in the middle, representing the floor area, and here you can see some more perhaps typical average kind of bases where there's just sand, gravel, earth, boulders, that kind of thing. And here you can see now some of the elements, how they flow across the individual bases. There's some of those pieces of wood over there in the 9 bases most on the left, the sort of the timbers, they flow across the bases and you see where they're cut. There's the whole kind of floor pieces in the middle. Now I built this base set while they've been in a horde layout. One of the things to consider is how does that work when you re-rank your unit in bus. So one of the tricks that I've done here is I've used more generic bases to go into the ends of the horde formation, and when you re-rank into a bus formation, you can basically pick up your generic bases, move them to the back. All your command group and central models are all on the more elaborate bases, and then you've got a whole bunch of models to go on the ends of your horde formation or at the back of your bus. So now we've got a set of bases for your unit which are coherent across themselves and individual, and all made with a little bit of sweat and tears and cursing, and not too much. Because one thing I did learn here, the ice block sticks are a pretty hard kind of wood, and they're a little bit of a pain to cut up. So if you look at the pictures of the bases now post cutting up versus before they were cut up, there's a few of the ice block sticks that are fragmented a bit more. Some of them split when I was trying to cut the bases out, and it took a little bit more work than I'd like. But if you've got a Dremel with a cutting disc, that'd be ideal, and you just buzz them out in seconds. I used one of my old X-Acto razor saws and a hobby knife and quite a bit of elbow grease, and it worked out okay, because in the end, if it's distressed wood, split floorboards, doesn't really matter. It's all just going to be nice and flat and under the feet of the models. So now here we go, they're off and ready for painting. So I hope this was a little bit interesting around how to make your bases for an entire regiment or unit, still without spending any amount of money really. So yeah, thank you very much. Bye.